And I would like to first say, Tervetuloa, welcome. I'm Louise Morgan, and on behalf of the FACA board members, I would like to welcome you all to a very special evening. We are so excited this evening to have as our special guest, the one and only Beatrice Ojakangas. She's going to demonstrate for us a salmon casserole out of her just newly released cookbook, the best casserole cookbook ever, if anybody can see it. Last Saturday, Lee Dean wrote an article for the Star Tribune titled "Minnesota's Most Prolific Cookbook Author is the Authority on Casseroles." I borrowed a few paragraphs from that article because I'd never be able to put together a better introduction. And so this is out of the article. This Duluth writer with a beaming smile and dry sense of humor has made her mark on the national and international and culinary scene over her 58 years as an author, despite her distance from the trendsetters and publishers on either coast. When Magnus Nilsson, the globally acclaimed Swedish chef, came to Minneapolis for an appearance at the American Swedish Institute several years ago, he had one request: to meet Ojakangas. He did, and he asked for her autograph. Her unofficial title may well be Baker Laureate of the Nation, based on the topic of many of her books. With the focus of Nordic cuisine, she became the go-to resource on Scandinavian food for Julia Child and Martha Stewart, with whom she appeared on television, as well as for editors of Bon Appetit and gourmet magazines and other publications. So too for the congregation at First Lutheran Church in Duluth, where her Lenten dinners and lutefisk meals are legendary, as is her hospitality. We're so fortunate tonight to welcome Beatrice Ojakangas. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And hello to everybody. This is such a different thing to just be doing this in my own kitchen. It's a sort of weird thing. But I am honored and happy to be here. And I thank you for the introduction to the book. The book is new, but it's newly republished. And I think the new book is much more clean looking, much more appealing, I think, than it was in the beginning. My first book was one that you might recognize with the cover. Do you see that? The Finnish book. And in there, you know, now that we're talking about the Ukrainian, what's been happening in Ukraine reminds me so much of what the Finns talked about when the Russians were trying to take over Finland. And it was just an amazing thing about how they handled refugees from Karelia. The Russians did take that part of their country, and all Karelians evacuated their homes, leaving behind their treasures and all their beloved homeland. So I can really, makes me want to cry when I think of the Ukrainians having to leave. Like every time they talk about what's going on, it's kind of like that happened in Finland. It happened in Finland, and there were 420,000 Karelians that remained, that chose to leave, and up to 10% of Finland's total population were displaced by 12% of the Finnish. It was 12% of the Finnish soil that was taken. And all these Karelians were welcomed into the homes of Finns. And our relatives talked about that. It was really very emotional for them. They talked about how their how they shared their homes, and they had to share everything they had. Luckily, they had something to share. Eventually, all the Karelians got a home that replaced the one that they had to leave. But the main problem that arose among the home sharing plan had to do with the differences in their bread baking habits. And I've written this all in the book. So the Karelians were used to baking bread almost every day. And the Western Finns baked it only twice a year. And they dried it and they put it on a pole. And that's why the Finnish rye bread has that classic hole in the middle, because they were put on poles and strung up in the tupa, so that they could, and the rye bread just, when it dried, it didn't dry real hard and crispy, but it was hard to chew. And the Western Finns said that it was good for their teeth to do that. And the Karelians said, no, they were breaking their teeth. It was one of the things that they had big issues about. Then after the displacement of 10% of the population brought about by the imbalance of wealth, and something had to be done to compensate the Karelians for their property losses. To do this, it was decided that the rest of the Finnish people who had suffered less gave both money, property, and jewelry to the Karelians. And I remember distinctly being in the Finnish home of a relative of ours, and she looked at my wedding ring and she says she had gold rings once, but she donated her rings to the Karelian cause. So there's been hardships in the past. So it wasn't an easy life, but it was one that they managed to come through beautifully. And now in Finland, there's a lot of beautifully newly designed homes, very nice. So I just thought that was a fun one. I wrote about that in the Finnish cookbook. Fun to share that. But anyway, tonight I thought I'd do a Finnish salmon casserole for you. And the Finns would call it a lohilaatikko. My husband, whose grandma always called it a laksalooda. Well, laksalooda isn't correct, because lax is a Swedish word for salmon, and lohi is a Finnish word for salmon, and laatikko is the word for casserole, and looda is the Swedish word for casserole. So this is salmon casserole anyway, but a lot of Western Finns have this Swedish language mixed up in their vocabulary. Anyway, this is a very simple thing, and the reason I wanted to show it is because it goes together so easily. And what we need to do is you butter the looda or the laatikko or the casserole, and then we're going to make matchstick potatoes, which I just sliced these already into 1/4-inch slices. And if you stand them on end, you can easily make matchsticks out of them. And that's important for this casserole because it bakes quickly that way. So I'm going to put this into my casserole dish. And there's no reason why we have to be real fussy about it, because in my recipe, I don't even say to particularly layer anything. You just have to mix it all together.
Beatrice, can you turn the camera down a little bit to show what you're doing?
Sure. Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm making matchsticks. You have to have a sharp knife. I sharpen this knife almost every day. So I will crunch, crunch, crunch. Potatoes.
Good potatoes.
Well, you can use yellow potatoes, you can use russets, whatever, yellow or red potatoes. It's the kind of thing that we made a lot in my home. And what we need is about a pound of potatoes, which we don't measure that so well. We just take as many potatoes as we're gonna have people over, you know. And so that's how I'm doing it. And then we take and cut the onions into the same kind of thin slices. And I'm putting that into the casserole. Then we have the skinned salmon. I'm cutting it just into chunks. And you can use any kind of fish. You can use, you can, if you don't have salmon, you can substitute any other kind of fish that you'd like. Yeah, Susanna just came. And so we're gonna put this into the casserole dish. You need about a 2-quart casserole. Now, I'm going to mix this all up with my fingers, and I didn't measure the casserole dish at all, but I said it was about a 2-quart dish. So we're going to mix it all together. Can you see this, what I'm doing?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And then we're going to add a cup of cream and a half a cup of milk and some salt and pepper. And that goes into the oven and it bakes for, here's a cup of cream and a cup of milk. And it'll bake at 425. I have the oven hot already. And we'll put in, where did I put my, there it is. Dot the top with butter. I probably should have sprinkled it with the breadcrumbs first. So that'll go on. And everyone's got breadcrumbs. I mean, you can make them yourself. These happen to be panko crumbs, which stay really nice and crispy through the baking. And we'll dot the remainder of butter on top and put that into the oven.
How much butter was that?
About 2 tablespoons roughly. You could use as much as you want to use, but I like butter. So that's, anyway, so we get this into the oven, and by the magic of television, see, this goes on like this. I didn't have the identical dish, but this is how it ends up looking. And when the casserole is done, it'll be bubbling around the edges and it'll get nice and brown. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
About how long does it take?
It takes about 45 minutes. 45 minutes at 425. And then I'm going to spoon some of it out to a dish. You can see what it looks like. And it's good old-fashioned belly-filling kind of food. Potatoes and onions and cream and fish. So that's kind of where we are right now. I'm opening it up for questions. Does anyone have any other questions to ask?
Did you put any salt and pepper in it?
Oh, yeah. Yes, yes. And I forgot to do it. I put it in the oven I put salt and pepper on the top. About a teaspoon of salt is about all we need.
Could I ask how much fish you used?
Oh, the recipe calls for about, well, a pound of salmon or rainbow trout, and you have it skinned. You can skin it pretty easily.
Thank you.
A pound of salmon, a couple of onions, a cup of cream, um, 2 tablespoons of butter, half a cup of milk, and then the breadcrumbs for the top. But you know, you can just kind of freelance this. You don't have to be so particular about the weights and stuff, but you need to have some idea. What we used to do all the time is think of 1 potato per person. So if there who wants a medium-sized potato, I didn't do all the peeling and the cutting ahead of time, because then it's hard to talk. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I know I probably skipped over some things here.
So would you mind, we have a newsletter that we put out. Could I share this that I think it is the Finnish salmon casserole, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on page 353 of
Yes.
the casserole book, and you certainly can, yes.
It said it's a summertime food.
Well, yeah, because I said it was summertime because that's when the river would be open and we'd go out and catch fish. But it's good any time of year. So, thank you so much for allowing me to show you this, and I hope you enjoy the casserole book. There's like 500 casseroles in this book, and when I had to sign the contract to write the book, I thought, oh my gosh, 500 casseroles. How am I going to get that many? And where do you go to come up with 500 casseroles? Well, I thought the first thing I've got to do is go to the dictionary, Webster's dictionary, and get the definition of a casserole. And the definition of a casserole is either the dish that the food is cooked in, or the food that's cooked in the dish. And so that, oh my goodness, that'll cover a lot of things, And so in my book, I've got about 20 in each chapter, and the chapters start with appetizers, and then I've got the basic recipes to replace Campbell's soup, because I feel like people were using too much of the canned foods, and they don't taste as good and they're a lot more expensive than using the canned soups as a sauce. So I've got a whole chapter of different kinds of sauces that to replace the Campbell's soup. And so we have in the beginning recipes for all these sauces. Then we have a whole bunch of appetizers and first courses. And I thought, well, and there's directions for making your broths and stuff like that too. But chapter 1 is basics for casseroles, and going on from there, I give directions for how to host a potluck and so on. We've got appetizer casseroles, casseroles baked that are bread baked in a casserole dish. Everything, side dishes, main dishes, pork casseroles, mixtures of different kinds of all the different categories of anything that you would eat, So I've got, if I can find my breakfast and brunch casseroles. But the breads are all no-knead breads. They're kind of fun because you can just stir them up and put them in the casserole and bake them. Beef, pork, and lamb and veal, game casseroles, pasta casseroles, grain and legume, fish and shellfish. That's the category that tonight's casserole came from. Vegetarian casseroles, casseroles for crowds, casseroles for two, casseroles for kids. You know, that was the hardest one to write. Kids are so picky. Casserole desserts. So by the time I got done, I really had more than 500 recipes.
Where did you find them all, though?
Pardon?
Where did you find all those recipes?
Well, they're ideas. Well, I don't. What I do is whenever I'm out anywhere talking to people, we get ideas from friends, traveling. I don't really get all the recipes from in their complete mode. What? Oh yeah, casserole. My daughter is here saying they're in my head. But you just have to think, and every time I'd eat something different or hear about something different, it was kind of fun to just make the recipe for it. And I find that a lot of recipes that were published are really complicated too, and I like to simplify, make things a lot easier to handle.
Say, I appreciate that you did that chapter on the sauces. I'm looking forward to seeing it because that is helpful for then trying to make something gluten-free.
Oh yeah.
By tweaking things, because Campbell's soup is not. So.
Oh, it isn't, and you can tweak your own. If you're gluten-free, you can tweak it your own way.
Yeah.
But they've got the basic recipe here and the basic flavorings, because if you're gluten-free, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be,
Yeah.
flavor-free.
I have a casserole in the oven right now.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. It's an enchilada casserole.
Free. Well, if you use corn tortillas.
It's corn tortillas, but I cut them up instead of trying to bother with rolling them and everything. It's just like.
Yeah. Good. Any other ideas?
Well, is your cookbook out now?
It just came out. It should be at Barnes and Noble and most bookstores.
What is the name of it?
It's it looks like this. It's called The Best Casserole Cookbook Ever.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And I love it because it has a nice clean look to it. Nice.
Yes, very nice. I'll look for that.
Yeah. And on the back, it says that it's $29.95. So that's all you need to know.
All right. Great, thank you.
Can I say what an honor it is to participate in this tonight? I've used your other cookbook forever, and
Cookbook.
I'm so honored to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So did you consider naming it a hot dish instead of the very best casserole, the very best hot dish?
We talked about that, and hot dish is so Minnesotan. And you go to different parts of the country, and it'll be a covered dish, hot dish. In the South, they call it something else, and so of course, I think hot dish connotates something else too. Are you a hot dish?
Yeah.
So I like the name casserole so much better.
Makes sense.
Any other-
Beatrice,
Pardon?
this is off the topic, but I have baked your breads forever, since the very first cookbook when I was a kid. And you've given me some great tips, like using, if I'm using whole grains when I'm baking breads, to be sure to put some wheat gluten added. And that was one of my best advices from you. Are there any other tricks you can give us about, I know that's off the topic of casseroles, but for those of us in the audience who are bread bakers, it would be great to hear them again.
Well, there's a whole chapter on batter breads in here. And it's hard to make yeast breads without having gluten in the mixture. So, but I haven't really done a lot with gluten-free breads. It's a tough subject, and there are some good mixes out there. And you can go to like Bob's Red Mill and get gluten-free, all-purpose flour. But it isn't quite the same as using regular all-purpose flour that's made from wheat. It's harder and harder now to get a hold of rye flour. The Finnish tradition is to use a lot of rye flour, and that reminds me of the wartime bread that they had in Finland. I think many of you have heard of bark bread. They added ground bark to the rye flour because it just added bulk. I just wonder how many people had stomach aches after that. But I had an aunt who said bark bread is really good, So, but I don't know that it was all that healthy for you, but it kept people feeling satisfied. And to this day, I still love rye bread, but it's harder and harder to get good rye flour.
The Finnish hard, coarse ground flour that I was raised on, my mother and her sisters used to get it at Witta's feed store in Cloquet or in Esco.
Yeah.
And I haven't bought it for a couple of years there, but
I don't know if they're still in business.
I think they are. The only problem is when you get it, put it in the freezer, because every time I get it, it often has bugs in it because they just take it from the rye when they're mixing feeds for cattle. But it's all I was raised on, and hey, all of my cousins made it, so it probably is okay.
Well, it probably keeps us very, or made you very resistant to all kinds of bugs.
Okay, diseases.
Yeah.
Do you have a recommendation for regular flour? What's your favorite regular, whether it's Dakota made or?
A lot of people say they get used gingivitis, but then when I was at one of my home economics type food conventions, the people that work at and not King Midas, but the one out east,
King Arthur.
King Arthur, yeah. They said, I asked them where they get their wheat from, and they get their wheat from Minnesota, from the Red River Valley, the same place where all the other stuff comes from. That's really so good.
The problem I've found with King Arthur, I avoid King Arthur whole wheat flour like a plague because it just isn't as good as Dakota made or any of the others. And I've read reviews about it too. Maybe they've improved it, but I quit using that 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, their whole wheat flour comes from the same source as everybody else's. And it's all from up here in the Red River Valley, both on the Dakota side and on the Minnesota side. And that's where they really, were able to grow the best wheat for making bread, for making bread. So we can be proud of that.
Is King Arthur still a separate company, or did that get bought by General Mills?
No, it's still separate.
Still separate, but Dakota Made, I think, is not still separate.
I don't know. All those things have changed so much and kept track. Wait, you can't keep track when you can't get together with people.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So what is your favorite thing to bake to have with an afternoon coffee?
Well, my favorite thing to bake is, I'll show you.
Oh, sorry, you ate
something. That's okay. I just like to make plain old baguettes. And each one of these, this is represents 1 cup flour. And it's so easy to do. I just have a tablespoon of yeast, couple teaspoons of salt, 4 cups of flour, and about 2 cups of water. and mix it all up, and that's my favorite kind of bread to make because it's so easy. I do it all in the, just throw it all in the food processor and just let it go. So I'm not much of a sweet eater, but I do make a lot of cookies.
What's your favorite cookie then that you make?
Oatmeal spice cookies.
Oh.
Or chocolate chip with walnuts. I just have, in fact, I've got a batch sitting over here.
Could you just run the baguette ingredients one more time? I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I start with a tablespoon of yeast, and I put that in the bottom of the food processor. I've got a food processor with a. I could actually walk over there and show you. And then I add 4 cups of flour on top and 2 teaspoons of salt. Should we walk over there and take a look at that? My daughter Suzanne has a big help. Okay, there's my cookies.
Can they see?
Can you see this now?
Yes.
All right. To make 4 loaves of bread, just measure 1 tablespoon. This is bulk yeast.
Okay.
Right into the food processor. And then I'll take 2 cups of warm water. Let's see, where's my 2-cup measure? Right here. This is very technical, isn't it? Okay, I pour that in here so that the yeast can dissolve first. And then in here, I have my favorite flour, which is Dakota made bread flour. And I just measure 2 cups. And then 2 more cups. Thanks, Susanna. And then I'll throw in 2 teaspoons of salt. And if you want to make it fun, you can throw in some herbs and stuff here too, but I usually just do these. And then turn the processor on. Get myself organized here. Turn the processor on. Pour in the water until it comes together in a dough.
Wow.
How long do you need it in the food processor?
Until it all comes together like that.
25 times. I thought.
About 25 times, yeah. And then I just open it up and feel it. It feels right. Yeah, it feels right. And then we just leave it in there and let it rise. Isn't that hard?
You leave it in there how long?
Until it fills up, until it rises and fills up the.
And sometimes blows out the top.
Oh yeah, sometimes I leave it too long and it comes out over the top. And you know, bread is very forgiving. You can walk away from it. I can leave it now and go shopping. I come back later and continue. So then I just cut it into 4 parts and shape it into a baguette, let it rise, put it into a 425-degree oven. And usually, I used to always throw in water, but now I just brush it with water.
You don't use the pans of rock anymore.
No, I haven't used. See, there's my casserole. But I shape the dough and put it on a parchment paper and let it rise and put it in the oven and throw in some water and we're all set.
Is that in this book
Yes, very first recipe in the book.
Okay.
Yeah,
I would never have thought of putting food processor. I thought for sure you were gonna do it in the KitchenAid or something.
well, the KitchenAid is, food processor goes quicker.
You don't have to need it then.
Then I don't need it. I don't have to knead it. Of course, you can put it into the KitchenAid and knead it there, but the food processor I find is a little bit easier to.
How long do you bake it, please?
Usually 20 minutes at 425. And before I put it in the oven, I'll brush it with water, or else I'll throw water into the oven with it
On the ground.
on the floor. On the floor.
Yeah, all over.
Okay, so clear as mud, I'm sure, but the recipe is in my soup and bread book too. So
Mhm.
Yeah, well, we've got 5 cookbooks that we're gonna be giving away tonight, so.
oh, good.
I've got your casserole, the Great Holiday Baking Book, the Finnish Cookbook, and the Great Whole Grain Bread.
Wow, that's pretty nice. Thank you.
It looks
Well, thank
like you're living in Zavago, Duluth, in your in a Zavago apartment.
No, we're not in Zavago. We're in the Bluestone View. It's a brand new building. We've got the gorgeous view of the lake, which is what we like.
Louise, there's a couple of questions in chat. I don't know if you want to ask Beatrice those
Oh.
questions.
Oh, go ahead.
Let me see, we said, if you substitute Swedish anchovies, would this be similar to Johnson's Temptation?
Yes,
And that's the casserole.
in the casserole that I made. Yeah, Johnson's, and the Finnish word is Janssonen kiusaus. A temptation is a kiusaus.
Mhm.
And then we have a question, do you have a pure rye bread recipe without any wheat flour?
That's really hard to do because rye flour has such a small amount of gluten in it. But you can do it. It's very sticky and very heavy. It's in the Finnish cookbook. The Finnish cookbook, yeah.
And then a question was, how do you decide to bake at 350 or 425?
Well, it all depends on what I'm wanting to bake. If the 425, I like that because I get a nice crust on bread. But if you don't want to get a crust before cooked in the middle. So 350 is a better choice for something that's more dense.
Someone asked, what's the secret for good piraka crust?
Piraka crust? You're talking about the rye crust? Karjalan piraka. Oh, that one is just plain rye flour and water, and I usually put a little bit of oil into that so that it has some shortening effect to it. Okay.
Beatrice,
Yes.
I noticed that you have the beautiful sarpaneva cast iron pot behind you.
Yeah.
What is your favorite thing to cook in that?
Oh, it's a heavy pot, so it's a good thing to make a stew in. It holds about 2 quarts, and so a stew or a soup or a stew, that's a good thing to cook in it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, welcome. All of a sudden,
I
my
have
screen is.
a question. Your screen is black.
Beatrice,
Yeah.
Beatrice, is there do you ever use a fast read thermometer to determine if your bread is done? Like,
I have done that, and you'd have to bring. You can plunge it into a loaf of bread, and it should go up to almost 200 degrees, and it'll be done. Yeah.
We have a question. Do you have one favorite food?
Bread. Of course, I like cheese too. Bread and cheese.
Squeaky cheese?
Oh, squeaky cheese is fun to make. I haven't done that for a long time. But yeah, I've got a good recipe for squeaky cheese in one of my books. Trying to remember which one it is.
I have a question.
Okay. Yes.
Question?
Go ahead. Yes. Getting back to the Karelian pirkas, when I've tried to make the egg butter, it seems really heavy. Maybe I've put too much butter in relationship to the egg.
Well, you can, it doesn't matter. You just mix the two hard cooked eggs, and butter the way until you like it. You do it until you like it. So it reminds me of a chef that I was talking with in New Orleans, and he was making jambalaya, and he says, "You cooks it till it be's done." And
I also wanted to thank you for tonight. I have your book, the Finnish cookbook that I got back in FinFest back in 2010. So it's an honor just to see you again.
Oh, thank you.
Kiitoksia paljon.
Ikästä.
Yeah. Where did you get your Marimakko apron?
Where did I get this one?
Finland.
Well, I had some from Finland, but maybe it was from one of the Finnish shops too. Could be.
Oh, okay, that's nice.
Yeah, there's I don't know if it's still in business or not, but there's a Finnish shop in Minneapolis that I like to go to.
Yeah, I almost think they're not in business anymore.
But you can go online too.
Yeah, right.
There's a wonderful Finnish store, but it's in Marquette, Michigan.
Oh, I know that one too. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Can I
Do
say?
you have a favorite moyaka? I guess that's not the right term, but soup.
Moyaka.
It's so funny that we have the word moyaka because they don't know that in Finland. They don't have heard of a moyaka in Finland. That's so Minnesotan. Are we coming in here?
So what do they say? How do they say it in Finland?
It's a lihakeitto. It's a soup. It's a keitto.
Keito. Okay.
There's my. Yeah, we're digging for some things to drink here. Okay, any other questions?
Beatrice, it's not a question, but I can hardly wait to make that salmon casserole.
It's so it's so easy. You don't have to worry about measuring exactly.
Well, I do a little quick one. I don't know, you probably think I'm crazy, but I use canned salmon, canned sliced potatoes. I pour that all in. I pour it into the casserole dish with the onion, salt and pepper, and the juice from the salmon can, and I cook it. And that's my salmon casserole, but I can hardly wait for yours.
Well, if you like it, if you love it,
Quitos.
that's all that counts.
Yeah, I can't wait. Quitos paljon.
Ikästä.
Well, we've got a comment here that, thank you. I use your Finnish cookbook frequently, making Karelian pies tomorrow. I now live in Oregon and have a local farm that grows dark rye and grinds fresh flour. Lucky me.
You are lucky. Yes.
From Susan Koshak.
What was
So,
it?
Susan Koshak? Am I pronouncing it right?
You know, depends on how it's spelled.
Yeah, probably kind of like me, where you have some Finn and something else.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So maybe we'll start doing a drawing. If anybody else has last questions. Because we've got 5 books. I think we'll start with this one. The first one is the soup bread cookbook, and Katya is helping me. She took down all the names and she's drawing one out of the magic
Actually, I'm
box.
gonna have Akko come and help me here so that, since I did all the writing, so Max is gonna help me today. So, yeah, Mojakka, it's one of those, I'm a, Swede Finn. I was born and raised in Sweden by Finnish parents. So I spoke Finnish first, Swedish second. And when I came to Minnesota, I learned about Mojakka, Saint Urho, which I had no clue about, and all these interesting traditions here. But anyhow, here's Max. He's gonna help us. Just roll around your hand and take one name. No, that one, that person left, so. All right, what's the name? Darlene Esco is the first
Okay,
winner.
Darlene, you get the soup book.
All right.
I'm gonna write that in it. Okay.
Call my name. Call my name.
The next one was the casserole book. Oh, yay, that's the big one.
Mm.
So, drum
Okay.
roll.
Janie Ahola, you are a winner today.
Who is it?
Janie Ahola.
Oh,
Wow.
Jamie. Oh, okay.
Perfect.
Okay, the next one is the Great Holiday Baking Book.
That's one.
Carol with an E in the end. I just wrote down the names as they are on the Zoom call. So there was a Carol.
This one.
Has she dropped?
She's right.
No, she's still there.
She's waving.
She's
Oh,
waving.
there, okay. Then you are the winner of this book.
But what's the last name? I need a last name.
It's Carol Crutch. Krutsch.
Oh,
That's one of my favorite books.
This is Susanna, by the way, my daughter.
Hello.
hi.
Hi, Susanna.
Hello.
I've been behind the scenes here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So now this one, Finnish Cookbook, the Finnish Cookbook.
Mm.
Anita Johnson. That lady.
All right. We see you. Anita Johnson.
Okay.
That was it.
No, got one more.
Oh, okay.
You got one more chance, Marlene.
Yeah, right.
Okay, this one is the Great Whole Grain Breads.
Oh, that would be a good one.
There's finished stuff in there.
Yeah.
Okay, who's,
They're all good ones.
And then we have
It actually says Thomas's iPhone. So whoever is
Thomas's iPhone has one.
Thomas's iPhone.
Yeah, are you still there? I did check and made sure that nobody would drop out if they are out, but Thomas, are you here?
Or whoever is on Thomas's iPhone.
Just looking here. Do we see him? Maybe he dropped out. Yeah, I see a couple of people have dropped out. So if Thomas is not here anymore, we will
Do a new one.
just double checking all the names.
He's
All
not
right.
here.
Okay, then we're gonna pull a new name. Hold on, drum roll.
And we have Judy Olia.
Olila.
Olila.
Olila. Olila. Are you here, Judy?
Sorry, I thought that was 1A.
Judy?
On the third page.
Yes, I see Judy. So Judy, I hope you can see this and hear this. You are a winner.
That's
Yes.
Ollila, right?
Right, yes.
Okay.
Well, congratulations.
And the crowd went wild.
Yeah, right.
I will be,
That Finnish crowd.
I will be mailing them to you. So I want to thank you so much, Beatrice, for doing this for us. I mean, like I said, you are our Julia Childs, and thank you so much.
And thank you.
Yeah. Kiitos paljon.
And thank you to everybody for coming tonight. I think it's been a wonderful time. So once again, if you haven't joined FACA yet, please consider joining. It's the best $25 right now that you can spend, and you get lots for it. So keep our Finnish community going strong.
Right.
Anybody else have any other last minute things they'd like to say?
No, nice.
There was a person here that was a visiting professor at the university, and she was a linguist. And we talked about the Moyaka word, and she went back and she went to some place in Vasa and did find the word. It's very, very old.
Oh, well,
Boy, if it was very old, then it got all worn out and it never got.
I guess.
Okay, well, thank you. And I'm gonna say good night to everybody, and we'll see you again. And thank you again, Beatrice. We can't thank you enough.
thank you.
Thank you. Good
Good night.
night.
Good night.
Good night.
Kiitos, kiitos.
Kiitos.